Nice. Shanmugam,
Awesome.
welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure. How are you doing?
I'm great, bro. I love what we were just talking about a moment ago before we started. We were talking about how we have accrued a database, a library of content on our YouTube channels and our books about what enlightenment or awakening is. And now that can act as a resource for all of our other selves that are interested in this topic. And that's awesome. And one of your books is titled The Truth About Spiritual Enlightenment. And I love that. And I'd love to start things off by asking you, what have you found across your different angles on this theme to be awakening?
Well, the most important thing would be the freedom from the conceptual reality that people are stuck in, because we grow up learning the language, learning concepts about the world. So we create a representation of the world inside us, and we create beliefs about everything, including the person that you think you are. And that is like a story, a story, a bundle of thoughts, emotions, memories, everything. We get identified with it. And no matter what we read, even when we read spiritual things, we always tend to take everything conceptually, another concept to save in the memory, identify with. But yeah, the first thing was, in 2002, there was a realization, a realization of an understanding of what spirituality is really all about. It has got nothing to do with the books that I have studied so far in my life. I was memorizing concepts, and maybe I sounded cool when I mentioned those words like, moksha, mukti, and samadhi, things like that. But I didn't have anything in my experience. And the most, shocking realization was that it has got nothing to do with the story that I'm identified with, the story that I'm trying to improve. That story doesn't even exist. It's like just a story, bundle of thoughts. So that was in 2002, I think. It was like a glimpse, realizing the possibility, the potential. That relieved me a lot, even though I still suffered much. I feel that there's like an insurance or something. I don't lose anything. And then it continued, for 12 years. And after that, it was like mind blowing. For me, it was like hitting a reset button. It was like that. When somebody hits a reset button on your brain, you lose all the conditioning. Suddenly you become like a child. Everything is pure as if you're just born, and you don't think about tomorrow. That's how it was. So it has got to do with it. It is very simple. No concepts to remember, no, it was not like, it's a relief from a burden, lifelong burden. And it entirely changed everything. And I can say that it gave me a new vision and new strength to sustain whatever that happens, a new vision. And that also opened me up to endless possibilities, mind-blowing and beyond words, like, never thought as possible. Yeah.
Love that, bro. So good. And it plays perfectly into the Pali, the Buddha teachings, where nibbana is unweaving or unbinding or unfabricating. Very similar with nipapanka is the same, right? So you're not mentally proliferating, which is self, others, world, stories, all of that. And so then like the reeling back of the mental proliferation, so there's no fabrication, there's no weaving, there's no story, has been recently so like revelatory, and huge shout out to Rob Burbea, and actually Frank Yang, who pointed me to Rob Burbea in his book, Seeing That Freeze, Meditations on Emptiness and Dependent Arising. And it's really when we reel it back, what is in innermost direct experience. And that's beautiful, bro. And it's also really nice because now we can, instead of getting stuck at one of the conceptual layers, like you said, which I think is so important also, like samadhi, and like getting stuck on that, and a pranayama, anapanasati, like be mindfulness of breath, and just like just like getting stuck with the meditator is still behind the eyes, type thing. So there's all these layers that we can still get stuck in, and I love that. That's great. So now, from the place of awakening or realization where there's no story that's operating the show, let's say, it's more like the freedom. It's like freedom, spontaneity, purity, childlikeness. Yes.
Yeah.
To talk about that for a bit, like that natural state.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like you can see things in a very simple way, what many people struggle with. Like, for example, I'll tell you just one example, maybe. The fear of failure, people do not try things just because they think that they will fail. And a lot of people don't do a lot of things, don't do efforts just because of this. And that is tied to the self-concept or the narrative. When you don't have that narrative, you don't really have that fear of failure. You can pretty much do anything you want, right? So it is just like that, just like how a child, learns to walk. It falls down, gets up, walks again. And it's fun for the child. But when human beings fall down, it is like they have to recover. They take a long time, and there is a lot of rumination, a lot of stories going on in the head. It always happens to me, and that reduces your ability to try the next time. But when you don't have such a story, when you are not bound by it, you can just do anything, But initially, there was an absence of intention. Like, I didn't want to do anything at all. Like, there is no do nothing anymore. That's how I initially felt. And a lot of people actually have this question, like, there is a complete absence of any intention at all. How to get over it? And it actually happens by itself. You finally figure out, because the demands, whatever life you're living, there are always demands that you have to meet. You have to pay your bills. You have to meet somebody the next week. So you have to actually do something in order to meet those demands. And you train your brain again, and it happens automatically. Like it is like training your brain to think about the future, to plan things in advance, to try to change things, even though you still accept everything as it is perfectly. You still need to change things in the world, right? So these days, I have very much adapted to that, very much adapted to planning, doing some action. Because I've been doing a lot of things which I never imagined possible, like going to gym, working out and things like that. And it's all fun. I don't think about the results, and that's exactly how I get results. Not getting fixated on where you need to reach, what we need to become. So yeah, that's beautiful. It's very simple,
Yeah.
So yeah, and the focus in my first book, I mainly focused on connecting science and spirituality, how we can approach the whole subject in a scientific way. And it is possible. Many people think that it is not possible because spirituality and science is separate. But we already have a field called psychology. We study mind, the body, and there is transpersonal psychology, which studies spiritual experiences and transformation. So I think, that is like, that will be the next step in the spiritual what is going on in the world. We will make more scientific approach, scientific way of thinking about this awakening. Because when it's thought about in religious way, there is a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstanding, clashes, things like that. So that's the barrier for people who really want to transform their lives.
So cool, because you and I both are fascinated by the synthesis of science and spirituality, which you could say is one of the core interests of the one, because of God. Because what is more interesting than the consciousness plus physicalism merging together, or science and spirituality merging together, or the psychology or the mind merging with the matter, or the external, the internal plus the external, the comprehender of creation, right? And there's nothing cooler than to be able to synthesize those two. And Shinzen Young called it the century's $1 trillion idea. And I very much agree with that. And as you were listing transpersonal psychology, that's also a place where I got really excited around maybe like three or so years ago. And that's a key entry point on the getting interested in consciousness from a scientific way, for sure. I love that you brought that up. And I could even go and say that there will potentially be more ways to add to it by maybe calling it like decentralized psychology or universal psychology or something like that. There's that. And then I also, in my first book, High Level Perception, authored a good chunk of it on the synthesis of science and spirituality. So again, it's it's a perfect alignment for you and I to be in this conversation together. And also that the way that we can basically measure, in a sense, let's say, the biometrics of like enlightened or awakened sages, we can see that the levels of rumination or the levels of story, the levels of self, are not present. And then we can measure that via EEGs and fMRIs and whatnot. We can take that and then we can leverage that as like a biometric biomarker for awakening. And then we can, that type of thing too. So there's a synthesis available there, which is really important as well.
Yeah, that's something that I have in mind. That is the idea that I have. Like, it's in the future, maybe in the science will find a lot of people record their brain state, like how their brain has changed. So that way we will narrow down the neural correlates of the awakening, what exactly happens in the brain. And then we can actually have that as a way to find out if somebody has reached the same level of transformation or not, the same awakening. There is already a good progress. In my book, I have a chapter on science and spirituality, and we have some idea. For example, there is a book that I have written about, introduced that book, which is about the left brain interpreter. That is in our left brain. Left brain is the seat of language, and there is a function in the left brain. It is called as left brain interpreter that creates the story. It connects past and future, and it tries to maintain a consistency, right? And we need, maybe, we evolved it for survival because we needed that consistency, because that consistency put together all the experiences. This is me, this is my past, and I shouldn't repeat these mistakes in the future in order to survive. But we probably overdid it, because in our times, whatever that was scars, that is available a lot. We have a lot of food and we have obesity. We have a lot of things in our story. You know, the story is very, very heavy. We have added too much to it, and that is making us suffer. And this left brain interpreter is what is responsible for the story. And yeah, that is a very interesting topic, actually. So I wanted to mention that, something that has a good potential for doing more research on.
I like how it can be as simple as we have added too much story and that makes us suffer. And then the neural correlates of the story making, which you feel is in the left hemisphere.
Yeah. Left brain interpreter is the word.
The left brain.
It is like there is a interpreter. Yeah. It is like, it seems for me, as I understand, it seems like, the left brain interpreter and then the prefrontal cortex and default mode network. It is a network in the brain. They all work together. The left brain interpreter creates the story. Prefrontal cortex uses that story to plan for the future, to make plans, to delay gratification and things like that. And default mode network is the network that gets activated when we are idle. So we get reminded about things that we need to do. And that is good if it is very little, like, adding some salt in the recipe. I usually use an analogy like the salt in the ocean water and the salt that is required in a very tasty sandwich or whatever, pizza, whatever snack that you like. So we have like, just like having too much salt, we have too much of that, too much of planning, too much of agenda, to-do list, and that has become very, very heavy, So basically we are resetting the whole thing. The story is, we are taking the brain away from all this identification. And then again, we have to train our brain consciously to use the prefrontal cortex default mode network, everything in a very productive way, in a much more, creative way. It is like designing your own life. So it becomes an art rather than an unconscious way of living and suffering. So that's very beautiful, like, yeah. It is like you become the artist of your own life, create whatever you want. And one more thing is that, when you are after this awakening, the shift, it is like you have already found what you're looking for in life in general. So the ultimate question of life has been answered. What is there in this life? What is ultimately I want has been answered. Now you're free to take your time and do things, without any fear. I mean, the existential fear or insecurity about what the future is going to be is removed. And that actually makes you more free to do things in a very efficient way. I can see it as something which is very true, because I struggled a lot when I was a child. Emotional problems, like a lot of things, rejection sensitivity, and trying to be normal. That is one thing that I was struggling with. I should be like, everybody else. And that actually, created a lot of problems in my performance. I couldn't perform, I couldn't speak, I couldn't, social anxiety and things like that. But I ended up writing a book, starting a channel that I never imagined all these things as possible. And it is this awakening which gave me that strength. When you forget about the story, the person that you are identified with, everything happens. There is a higher power that takes over many things. You don't even have to worry about it,
So good, bro. Woo! Love that. Yeah, we could say that when the stress about self relaxes, that higher intelligence, we could say this infinite intelligence, more effortlessly, like Lao Tzu called it Wu Wei, this very effortless action, this flow. It's so natural.
Yeah.
And then also, I love how one of the main reasons why that flow can really just be effortless is because, like you said, the ultimate question of life is answered. And
Yes.
that was the fire, you know. Ramana and Papaji talked about it like a flame under the ass that is fanned, that, you know, it's kindled,
Yeah.
right? And then that's like, I want to know myself, I want to know myself, I want to know my true nature. Pew! Like the moth dissolves into the flame of the infinite singularity, and then yeah, so cool. And then the expression of life from that perspective can then be whole. It can be pure. It can be in service to life, awakening to itself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the key thing. And then another key thing you brought up, which I feel is really important, is this. When we talk about the one infinite creator, we talk about it like a stylist. It's like the painter. And so become the artist of your life,
Yes.
consciously, instead of the unconscious programming. And so there's like a liberation from the matrix conditioning, basically, that is a huge part of this awakening. And a lot of it has to do with liberating ourselves of the patterns of conditioning of the matrix that have kept us asleep for so long. And so the classic thing is like 10 years ago or 20 years ago for people is you begin looking at, well, what is money? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is that thing? Who owns money? And another one is like, what is time? That's another big one. Yeah. So anyway, these fundamental questions can create shifts. Like, do I really believe what the media polarized propaganda? Why am I picking a side against another side that's in my same country or whatnot? This type of thing. These basic ones can help you like liberate more into that like effortless, free stylus of creation. And then another thing you mentioned, I think so important is, did you say, let me see if I can get this right. So the left brain interpreter creates the story.
Yeah.
Then the PFC, the prefrontal cortex, uses the story. And then the default mode network ruminates on the story.
Yeah. It is like, default mode network is like, we get reminders, actually. That is how it is supposed to be. Reminders about things that we need to do. All these reminders are associated with a feeling, emotion. Okay. And that's what is bothering us. Like, oh, I didn't do it. I mean, I'm not, for example, I'm single. I don't have I have to find a girlfriend is something that you have to do, but it comes with an emotion of, not being good enough, or, not being something like that, so everything has an emotional load. So it is like all these three things work together, but they're all overloaded. The story is so big, so heavy, and the prefrontal cortex is overloaded. It can get distracted very easily. And default mode network is also overloaded. Even when you're idle, you are under stress. When you're doing nothing, you can't really do nothing, and people often find ways to escape this silence. Like, they don't want to be left with themselves. They can't sit in a room without doing anything. They need a phone, they need somebody to talk to, movie or something like that. So because they can't face the mind when it is not doing anything, it brings all the worries and anxiety and everything. Yeah, go on. Actually, you were saying something. I mean, you're confirming if you understood it right. I mean,
this is so good.
Go
I was also just feeling into like more how you have identified this scientifically. I love that. Like, you identified more of the scientific, let's say, regions of the brain and activities of the brain that are what we talked about, what Buddha shared as a papanka, this like mental proliferation.
Reification, yeah.
Yes, yes. And so if the left brain interpreter is this like explanation generation, let's say, engine of sorts, then that can be like literally could be like Papanka might be like the left brain interpreter, like that explanation generation engine, this mental proliferation and conceptualization of self and others and world and stories endlessly. And then there's the prefrontal cortex using all of that explanation generation to usually to try and get something from the world to feel whole, because it feels lack, it feels separation, location, etc. And then that rumination of the default mode network, you also said a reminder. Like I like that too. The default mode network is such a reminder. Like there's a moment of like peace, and all of a sudden you're being like getting reminded about the past or getting reminded about the future. And then there's a proliferation that happens into those webs, and then the whole thing is to just like whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, because this the default mode network, there is actually a good thing about it. Usually it is thought of as a bad thing in spirituality because of this mind wandering and things like that. But mind wandering has a purpose. If it is like it brings brings your attention to many things that you have forgotten about. Even for creativity, mind wandering is a very useful thing. It is like you're exploring everything that you know and everything that you can expect. And with a little bit of what it is useful. And since it is overloaded, you're all messed up. Yeah. And there is another paper written by Richard Boyle. I want to mention this so that even people would be aware. It is called Cracking the Buddhist Code. That is a very, I'm very impressed by his work. His name is Richard P. Boyle. And the paper is called as Cracking the Buddhist Code, a contemporary theory of first stage awakening. This might be of your interest. And also, people who are watching might find this interesting because this paper has everything, like, he has identified things which mark this transformation. And he has given names to it. Like, for example, this absence of reification, and the sense of separation, the ability to live in uncertainty, because that is one other thing that you get after the freedom. We have a lot of uncertainty about life. Why we are here, that is uncertain in itself, but we are able to come live in that uncertainty as if it is a play after transformation. But before this, the uncertainty looks very dangerous. People want answers to everything to escape from this uncertainty. But that is not the case after awakening. You can live in a state of not knowing how the future is going to be. Whatever happens, you can adapt to it. No matter what happens tomorrow, I am ready to, flow along, flow with the wave, like you're surfing in the ocean. So, yeah.
Okay, so a couple things here.
Sure.
One of them is, like you said, that once we sort of reel back on the mental proliferation and we have an absence of reification, like you said, and like Richard said, then from there, we can use the left brain interpreter, the PFC, and the DMN in their good way.
Yes.
We can use them in the good way.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. I think there is not enough awareness about this part, especially how we have to, what needs to be done after awakening. Like, many people actually ask about this one part, which is also mentioned by Richard Boyle, absence of intentionality. That is a very important thing. The intentionality is completely absent. And this is somehow, it creates some kind of, other people are not, probably they're not happy about what you're doing, because everybody else thinks in a different way and you're not putting efforts to improve certain things because everything is fine for you. You accept everything. But then what you can do is like, this planning, thinking about future, it is actually like a muscle. If you don't use it, it becomes weak, but you can train it again. But when you really train it and use it, when you harness the power, it is like, you have swallowed the limitless drug. You can do anything because all you need is time. No matter what you want to do, you need time. Like, for example, if you want to write a book, it takes time. If you're spending the time without facing that anxiety, whether it will happen or not, what if it doesn't happen? What if it happens? My life will be like this. When this is absent, you can do your task, take your time, and it happens, without any resistance or any kind of suffering that people go through. Recently, that's what I am thinking about, like, how to use it the best. All the resources that you have in your body, in your brain, everything, a lot of people, they get trained to use those things because the brain, it rewires itself according to what you are giving the input, and everything can be taken advantage of, including watching movies. People watch movies for entertainment, but movies if you're awakened, for example, movie has a different purpose now. When you watch a movie, the movie exposes you to the forgotten world, what people struggle with, different aspects of life, different aspects of the problems that people around you face. It actually somewhat, it does something to bridge the empathy gap, because empathy gap is a phenomenon. Everybody has it. Unless you and I have the same problem, I can't understand your problem much. That is called as empathy gap. It is a cognitive bias. And even though we say that awakening improves the empathy, and that's because you're able to see things without the filter of your own ego, still there is an empathy gap. We don't really understand how much other people suffer because there is forgotten story for people who have awakened. So these are the things that are not written about, talked about in our spiritual traditions. Maybe they talked about it, but they didn't write it down because it'll confuse people. I don't know. But there are a lot of other possibilities for exploration in this field. Many things can be done. So yeah, it looks, the possibilities looks amazing, mind-blowing, And rather than trying to explain things to people, you have to show them what is possible. They will be amazed.
Love that. My gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so many good threads here. So one of the ones that just came up a moment ago is to read. I'm going to put the link to Richard Boyle's paper in the description of our video. And what I'm going to do right now is, and so people can read it, because I found what you just said with sharing this to be so important. So let's go ahead and read, let's at least read the abstract of the paper to the audience. So Richard P. Boyle, Cracking the Buddhist Code, a Contemporary Theory of First Stage Awakening. Abstract. The theory proposes that what Buddhists call awakening is equivalent to pure perceptual experience, or the awareness our perceptual systems would present to us if they acted without interference from our symbol processing systems. Two forms of interference are particularly apt to interfere: uncontrolled inner speech and the distortion of perception to fit reified conceptual structures. Uncontrolled inner speech has been linked with hyperactivity in the default mode network, DMN, which occurs when attentional demands are low. Reification occurs universally as children construct their own social reality from the culture into which they are born. Both the DMN and reification are products of evolutionary processes, trapping us in social reality and preventing us from entering perceptual reality. Research indicates that both sources of interference can be overcome through special practices and training. However, And people who have experienced first stage awakening report a pattern of features that is consistent with this theory. So you guys can find this link in the bio below to read this. This is a great recommendation, Shanmugam. So good. Cool. So I'll stop.
Thank you.
You sharing? Yeah, such a good one. And it's great to just even take a bit to read that together. So that, and then another powerful thing that came up was when we talk about the absence of reification or the absence of intentionality, what comes up for me immediately is shunyata, emptiness. And it's almost like we reel the expression of life backward into its source, you could say, into this black hole, this void. And then because we've now tasted that, we now know ourselves as that, we've maybe even bathed in it, but we're not stuck there because emptiness is empty itself. So we're not stuck there. We haven't reified again the crown of emptiness to then be something. But instead, from there, so we could say that there's no intentionality and intentionality of the stylist, of the creator at the same time. So it's like the avoiding of the void. But you've experienced both now. You taste both now. You are both simultaneously. Non-existence, existence, non-being, being, etc. So it's you are the entanglement of that simultaneity, the superposition. Yeah.
It's excellent. Yeah.
And to be it is most important, like you shared a bit ago too. It's about being it. Like you want the beingness of that entanglement or that superposition. You want the frequency or the vibration of it. And so to teach that is core, is key.
Yeah. Richard Boyle has also written a book, by the way. The book has a list of interviews with people, including Shinsen Yang, the one you mentioned, Shinsen, and a few other teachers. He has interviewed a lot of people asking about what happened in their lives, how they view reality after transformation. And that is also a good source. I think it's, let me see if I can find that book. Maybe I can let you know the name of the book. Yeah, it's called Realizing Awakened Consciousness, Interviews with Buddhist Teachers and a New Perspective on the Mind. And that's he's done it in a very scientific way. And it is also something that it is like a database similar to your YouTube channel, teachers of awakening explaining about what they went through. And then there is a textbook of transpersonal psychiatry. That will be a good book if somebody is actually studying transpersonal psychology, and that is actually a very good field. Maybe, it is very promising. It's going to be a promising field in the future, in the next 10 years, a lot of people, we might have vacancies, job vacancies and things like that, because it is a very promising field of study. And I think this is the only textbook available for that field. It has everything, articles from many people, including Ken Wilber, and many people have done research on this.
Awesome recommendations. Those two, textbook of transpersonal psychiatry and psychology, and Realizing Awakened Consciousness, interviews with Buddhist teachers and a new perspective on the mind. Awesome book recommendations also. I can put those in the bio also to the video. I think that's great to have these all in the bio. Nice, bro. So good. And I love another thing that you mentioned, I think super important is the empathy gap. That's why the Bodhisattva vow is so prominent also, because in a sense, the Bodhisattva vow is the like your heart. It's like the metta component is still so prominent, and it is where you feel yourself as the totality, and you're with your paintbrush, your stylus, that you're drawn to express in a way that shepherds the rest of life awakening. And that way there's no empathy gap, because otherwise the empathy gap can grow too big with no intentionality.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we're in a sense, we're watching another self that is trapped in story, and then the pointing is too absolute, you could say. And yeah, because it wouldn't have worked. Like for me 10 years ago, no way. Like an absolute pointing wouldn't have worked to snap me out of story. So there was just
yes.
there was the incremental dissolving of the story. Yeah.
And the one thing is, a lot of these traditions, they isolated from the social life. Like, for example, in Buddhism, people who were seeking enlightenment, they renounced everything. They lived in monasteries. And in one way, it is like, you're experimenting things in a professional settings. Like, for example, using a drug in a doctor's office under his supervision. There are a lot of experienced people who have already went through awakening. You're separating yourself from the social life. Under their supervision, you're trying out all the medication and things like that. It was a convenient way, but the thing is, it compromises on the social, the growth of, how an individual can perform. Your performance and skills, that is compromised. Like when you face the society, when you pay bills, when you go to work, or when you are living in the society just like everyone else, it is very different. You're training your brain to think like everybody else, at least to some extent. You're witnessing their problems. And yeah, in modern times, it is very, very necessary, because these days people don't want to go to monastery. That is not a good idea either. It is the best thing to do is just live your life, and then bring these spiritual practices as a part of your life without compromising on anything. Your relationship, your work, everything should go smoothly. And that is a bit tricky, because a lot of people complain, about their spouses getting too spiritual, too meditative, and that creates clashes. So maybe in the future, with the work of a lot of people, we might have a very efficient way of doing all these things, monitoring exactly. When science grows enough to study this more efficiently, we can document everything that happens, how their marital life is affected, how their performance and job changes, because it is like a double-edged sword. On one side, you're able to be in the present moment, focus and do your job well. But the other side, when you progress spiritually, you are giving less importance to all the materialistic things, pushing for promotion, competing, with other people and things like that. And that was a challenge for me too. Like, after 2014, for 6 months, I even forgot why I was going to office. I was working in a call center. And it was like for 6 months, I went very deep in meditation. It was after finishing every call, the wait time, I was just focusing on what is going on inside me, how my body was moving, each and every impulse. And I was listening. I was performing amazingly. In fact, there is a quality department which gave me a very good mark for addressing everything on the call, a complete call. But my sales performance was declining because I was not pushing customers to buy the product. It is like that, in inbound call center, and I have to push. And usually people, I mean, the temptation is incentives, but I didn't care about incentives much, or promotion or anything like that. I forgot it completely. And that is what will become a challenge for spiritual seekers these days, how they meet the expectations of other people around you. Like everybody else has a pride about you too. Your spouse, your girlfriend or boyfriend, your son, they are proud of you, even though you're not proud of yourself. I mean, that pride doesn't have the same meaning anymore for you, but it does for other people who, who, yeah. So in some way, there has to be some kind of empathy. We can't simply dismiss that as an unconscious behavior. It is just an expected behavior of everybody, depending on the level that they are at, the identification that they are going through. So I think that will be the next thing that can happen, which might benefit people.
Yeah, this is cool. So a analysis of this first stage awakening and the way that it both, let's say, plays into the empowerment. Let's call it empowerment and enlightenment. So enlightenment is the turn inward all the way, and empowerment is the exciting expression of life outward creatively. And so, so we could have an analysis of first stage awakening, enlightenment, the turn inward, and the way that it affects the turn outward in terms of potentially, let's say, sometimes this decrease in like intentionality or like drive for empowered success, must earn money and prove worthiness and increase self-image. For sure, those things like tend to decrease. But what's interesting is with that analysis, we can also see that the purity of the expression, when it does express in its empowered creative state, is much less about wanting to get self-image or wanting to get worthiness or validation, because it comes from a whole place that has no lack, and it comes from a place of wanting to shepherd the rest of life awakening from that bodhisattva vow. So I think that that's a powerful way of viewing it, what we just got to, this like analysis of the effect that enlightenment has on empowerment. That's cool.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, while we're talking, I'm taking notes, and I feel like there might be deeper collaboration or creation between us where we hone in on this exact theme. And I'm seeing it come up more and more between the other selves that I'm getting tighter and tighter with, is that we're honed in on basically like different angles on this exact theme, like the synthesis of science and spirituality and whatnot. And it's exciting feeling about creating with you, for sure. Yeah.
It's me too. Yeah, it's amazing to talk about it and move things forward in that direction.
And it also feels like when these, let's say, 2 points in the tablecloth come together from very awakened places, that their dance is quite empowered and accelerative. The like exchange of symbols from an empty place is like really powerful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and with the interaction, as you mentioned, there is an uniqueness to everyone's viewpoints. It's all complementary, and so it helps to get more clarity on this. I mean, how things are affected everybody has their own story to tell about, what happened after awakening, and, things that changed, their perspectives, and things like that. And also, one more thing that I want to bring up is the neurodiversity, the concept of neurodiversity. It is a very interesting concept because a lot of people that I have spoken with, they have problems like ADHD, autism, bipolar disorder, and a lot of people, even Shinsen, he had ADHD. He suffered from ADHD, and it looks like these things are not really disorders. It is just that they have some uniqueness. They are different, and I think ADHD might be very common among spiritual seekers. So we might even get clarity on these things. What exactly is ADHD, and how we can, help people who have these symptoms, because it is certainly not a disorder. It is just that they are motivated because of things like novelty. If something is novel, something is challenging, you're going for it. And these kind of people are needed for society. They don't have a disorder. They just can't live like everybody else. They always are in pursuit of new creative things. They take risks. They get distracted very easily because a lot of things are interesting in the world. So it is not that they don't have they have a problem in paying attention. It is just that regulating their attention is difficult because a lot of things catch their eyes. And so it is like, they have more they indeed have more potential. But when the life is like, you're repeating the same thing every day, it is not challenging for them, and they can't do that job well. I had ADHD myself. I just didn't know that it had a name for it. Only recently I realized that it is ADHD that I was suffering from. And it is misunderstood a lot. It is thought as a lack of attention, but it is more like, you either don't focus at all or you hyper focus. When you find something that that you like, you just do it. I mean, without even, you get into a state of flow. So that is what happens with ADHD people. And yeah, that is like, there is an overlap between these the disorders in the spectrum and the spiritual seeking. I always even allowed to ask questions, to people if they were, they have ADHD or things like that. Sometimes, if it is relevant, because yeah, I'm speaking to people a lot who have these problems. They have bipolar disorder, or autism, things like that. Do you have any experience of, getting these, talking to people who bring up this topic, the same theme?
Yeah, this is great. I love this topic as well. One that came up, not only ADHD and bipolar, but also autism is another one. So
Yes.
it's this, like you described already so well. There's a hyper activity around novelty and around becoming like masterful and not fitting into the matrix at all. And there's the spectrum, I think, like we said, is really important, where there's very, like you could say, it can be really tough to be plagued by, let's say, ADHD or bipolar or autism in ways that are don't serve enlightenment and empowerment, let's say. But when it does serve it, which is on, let's say, the good side of the spectrum, the amount of times that I've been called autistic or ADHD or bipolar, I can already say for the last 15 years, I've been called or diagnosed, and that every time there was something inside that was no. Like, I don't need your pharmaceuticals. Like I actually don't want to calm that down. There's something about it that is so true about what's being activated here. And I also feel the importance of how we could say like the negative polarity of the one or of creation can come through the matrix agenda, can come through the big pharma companies, and can come through the quenching of the drive of the awakening out of the matrix by plaguing with these pharmaceutical recipes for the quelling of said accelerative potential states of exploration. So that's another interesting component, because I've had several friends that were, oh my gosh, lit up in their journey of awakening, and then bang, got prescribed pharmaceuticals because family pressured them and whatnot, and then boom, all of a sudden it's like back to zombie. What the fuck? Back to unconscious. Yeah.
It needs more I think this field needs to grow a lot when it comes to the mental disorders. There is something that we don't know yet about these disorders very clearly. So I think that it is not really a disorder. Like, for example, bipolar, it's probably, it has a, we don't have a complete picture yet. And there's a lot of misdiagnosis too, in this area. People can be misdiagnosed very easily, a lot of confusion. Even doctors do not know much about, for example, one doctor I talked to, he didn't know that adults can have ADHD. Like, it is not something that only affects children. It is just a lifelong, it is like a trait actually. And there is actually, I don't remember the name of the person who said it, but he's a doctor. And he gave a different name. It is called VAST, V-A-S-T, Variable Attention Stimulus Trait. People who are labeled as ADHD people are actually, their nervous system works in a different way. They have interest-based nervous system, not importance-based nervous system, which means that they don't do things based on what is important. They're always, they are motivated. Their attention is directed based on interests, passion, and novelty is another important factor too. If something is novel, they are bound to do it. And there is also emotional reaction sensitivity, and also emotional sensitivity too. Like, they have intense emotions. So it looks like, he has a more clear way of putting it, telling exactly what it is, And personally, I suffered from a lot of issues, and I didn't even know what was wrong. It was like, for me, it was, everyone usually says that my childhood was wonderful. And then after that, it became, hectic. And then I lost the fun that I had in childhood. For me, it is totally the opposite. Childhood was less fun. It was miserable. And then, it improved. And now it is like I am the happiest, it is sometimes feel like I'm the happiest person around. I couldn't, I can't really find anybody else who is this happy, And but my childhood was entirely the opposite. It was like, something is wrong with me, and I didn't know how to explain the problem. And a lot of things happened, and I wish, I really think that it should improve, so that we don't have, other people do not face the same problem or go through the same situation, the struggles and everything that I went through.
Yeah, which is ultimately what we're passionate about, is the generation of content that shepherds life awakening without falling into the same pitfalls and struggles that we went through. And that's huge. And then another thing that that came up while you were sharing was, of course, to not forget the infamous schizophrenia. That's another one.
Yeah.
So to add that to our list, because there's a clear spectrum there as well, where it can be totally disastrous, but where it's also like, it is awakening. Like your sense of, quote, reality is no longer the world and the stories. And so, of course, yeah. So of course it can be, that's another one that came up for friends as well, is that it was a diagnosis as they were awakening of schizophrenia by their like family and the friends, and then just getting pumped with pharmaceuticals.
Yes. That happens a lot. Yeah, I know.
Yep. Basically, this new analysis of awakening from a psychiatric angle is going to be crucial as well. Yeah, that's the sum of it.
Yes, because since you mentioned schizophrenia, I think I can say something about it too. Schizophrenia, one of the symptoms is when a person is not taking care of himself, like grooming, for example, not dressing properly, not wearing good clothes. That is a symptom of schizophrenia. And as a person who is spiritually inclined is more likely to, less likely to take care of these things, like, grooming and things like that, wearing impressive clothes. He is more interested in meditating and things like that. And, a lot of other things too. Like, for example, even talking about things like aham brahmasmi, it can be misunderstood very easily, like a delusion. Another symptom of schizophrenia, he thinks he is God. So that is like a case of schizophrenia, right? But it is not really the case. A lot of people don't understand these words like aham brahmasmi and, things like that. So yeah, there are a lot of misdiagnoses that can happen. And transpersonal psychology, in fact, in the textbook of transpersonal psychiatry and psychology, you can see this mentioned. The main reason why this field evolved as a separate science is because of this misdiagnosis happening to people who go through spiritual awakening. They are diagnosed as somebody who is having a mental disorder or schizophrenia, things like that. Even about Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, I think there is a book. I have not read it, but the book is about he had some kind of temporal lobe epilepsy or something. And it happens a lot. It's very common. But I think this field itself needs a lot of introduction. Transpersonal psychology is only if people know about it, a lot of people will actually study the material, or they will show interest. And just experiencing meditation for 15 days retreat, it can actually help them to get a glimpse or really understand what it is about. All they have to do is just one meditation retreat or something. But the people are really scared about meditation in general because of getting into cults, or because of promises, false promises that are made in the name of spirituality, things like that. So if it's made scientific, then that is the only thing that they need, like an experience of meditation, or even using psychedelics in therapeutic, medically supervised conditions. That is discussed a lot in this book, Transpersonal Psychiatry. A lot of research have been done on various psychedelics. They have the power to give a glimpse, show what is possible. But again, it has a downside too. You can be on psychedelics all the time, and that would be, that wouldn't be good for your brain. You're training your brain, giving a different perception of reality to your brain. Your brain is not getting trained to face the actual challenging situation, that is in front of you. Yeah, because managing something when you have a drug in your brain might be easy, and you're not seeing the actual picture. You're not really seeing. It is like doing a bench press with supported bench press, or working out in a gym, but you're not using free weights. You're using some machines. It makes things easy, but it is not really an effective way, right? All the time. You have to face the actual stress. But yeah, chemicals do help in opening up people, making them open-minded, making them realize what is possible. I think in the future we might have non-duality pills or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of, swallow a pill, you have a glimpse of non-duality.
Which is what
way.
it's what entheogens are. Magic mushrooms,
Yes.
LSD, 5-MeO DMT, etc., are all usually glimpse generators. And and another analogy to this is taking a gondola up the mountain with the entheogen, which again just means unleashing God or the divine from within. And then the gondola comes right back down after getting to the peak. And so very similar to your analogy of using the assisted weights machines. So the entheogen is a glimpse generator, and then it's up to the individuation to further generate more of the natural state that the entheogen glimpsed for them, in essence.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy process because it's totally deconstructive. It's destructive because there are so many, I've also called them neuronauts. So they're like neural knots, tangles, right? And that to untangle them, to not have these trigger cascades happen in the proliferation, conceptual mental, it requires concentration. It requires meditation. It requires this, like this depth of self-inquiry that is not for the weak. It's really only there for those that want it so bad. And so it's just like picking up a musical instrument or picking up a sport, or picking up entrepreneurship. The statistics keep changing, but it's somewhere around like 95 or 98% of entrepreneurs fail their businesses that they started in within 10 years. And that's the thing that we're sort of, it's the same drive that when you wake up every morning for your entrepreneurial success, or for your sport or your musical instrument success, is the same thing for self-inquiry and focus and meditation success. So that it's that level that dissolves the neural knots that are constricting our expression. And I found that the neural knot is in many ways like another good way of tying in neuroscience, of neurology, with awakening, because it is like it's basically ossified pathways that the individuation can't easily liberate themselves from. So they become so associated with their name. I am Atlas. I have these 5 symbols that are strung together that define me and who I am. And so, one of the greatest ones is to dislodge in self-inquiry those little string of symbols that we've attached to this piece of life. Things like that.
Yes. Actually, the word "not" is, I think, is a really good word choice, because even in Sanskrit we have a word called Granthi. You might have heard about it, Granthi, and it literally means knot. And we have knots that we need to, untie. Like, so that is a perfect analogy, knot, because that is exactly what it is. Like, once it is free, once the knot is untied, there are a lot of such knots actually. There might be in yoga, they talk about 3 knots. One knot is called as Brahma Granthi. Brahma Granthi is about the knot that is everybody is entangled in that knot. It is about survival. You need to earn money. You need to follow what everybody else is following. You need to have a big house. So it is all about survival and security. The next knot, Vishnu Granthi, is conceptual. The conceptual knot, it is about me, the ego. I have to do this. I have to accomplish this. It is all about conceptual, the personal growth. I have to improve this and that. I have to. So that is about me. And then the one is about the ultimate, the identification. The second one is conceptual, about all the knots, not just self. It is about my country. It is about my group. It is about all concepts that we carry, including the religious concepts. So conceptual knot. And the third knot is actually the knot of the actual duality. I am different and the existence is different. That is the final knot. Once the other two knots are untied, the last knot, which is about the separation, the knot of separation, can be also removed. And then there is no separation at all. So yeah, that's a really good word, actually.
So let's play with that a little bit more.
Sure.
Because I love that. So Granthi, knot in Sanskrit, so cool. So I love also how the knot can be applied to the blockages in the chakras of the energy flow is another one. And then the freedom from those unblockages. So that's another great way to visualize the knots. And then, so let's see if I got this right. So Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra. And
yeah.
So Brahma is sort of like the identification with others and world.
The Brahma is like the basic, following the routine to have a secure life. What everybody is trying to do in general, I have to study, I have to earn money, I have to settle. So it is more about the instinct of survival and security.
Okay, cool.
And the next is conceptual, more about the concepts that we are dealing with. And the third is the, the separation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So the first one can be kind of like the matrix, or like following the Joneses or following the protocols of the collective. And then we have like we could say like a more of that's more instinctual survival. Vishnu being more about conceptual, specifically you said like identity, like me and identity, right? Cool.
Yeah, all kinds of concepts that bind us, the binding concepts. It can be anything like religion or ambition, whatever.
Okay, cool. So binding concepts. And then the last one being about duality. Rudra is the knot of duality, which then liberates from separation.
Yes.
Okay, nice. I love those. I'm also gonna dive deeper into that, because I love that. That's not in such a good way, to put it.
Yeah. The explanation that I gave, it is like my interpretation, because it is like a lot of different ways. I mean that these knots are explained. But when I looked at all these definitions, this is what I came up with, like a bottom line. What I understood, as meant by these knot from my perspective. That's what. Yeah. But yeah, it's. I think it explains a lot. It is even after you untie, it is the same, but it becomes so simple, right? It doesn't have those complications.
Wow, I'm feeling so good about this first conversation together.
Awesome.
Yeah,
me too. It's been talking for like more than an hour, probably.
Yeah, on my end too. A little more than an hour. Yeah, I'm feeling great. Like I'm feeling complete. I feel like there could be another potential to explore on this first.
Oh yeah, sure, we can do that. It's an awesome discussion. I love that. I mean, whatever we are discussing so far, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to connect with you.
Me too, brother. Me too. Especially the depth of understanding,
Yeah,
and the way that it springs up with you. I feel a great amount of resonance, magnetism, alignment, synchronicity. The puzzle pieces can fit well.
good. Yeah, I think in the future we can talk a lot about the concepts discussed in transpersonal psychiatry textbook, because that is something I feel like it needs to be known. This textbook is very hard to read for people. I gave it to a few people and they said, it's very complicated, it's very academic, but we can break it down in our discussions so that people find it easy to absorb. Like, people get introduced about all these work that has been done. It is there since 1968, so it's been, yeah, 50 years now. But this field is still not very well known, and the hard work that has been done in this field is not really very well known either. And we still find people who, think meditation is somewhat religious practice, doesn't have any value. So this certainly needs a lot of introduction to people. It can change lives when people are aware of all these possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love how we can like further together, especially the science spirituality synthesis, take it from that approach, and then that will automatically make it more familiar and friendly to mainstream audiences.
Yes.
Great. I love that. And that resonates. So we can explore that on our next chats. I just have some silly questions. What is your favorite?
Oh, yeah, sure.
What's your favorite food?
Favorite food? Oh, it's it keeps changing actually. I love non-vegetarian food actually. Fish. I love fish very much. It might sound very shocking for many people who are in non-duality. People always ask me, "Oh, do you eat non-vegetarian?" Yeah, I do, because I grew up differently. For me, non-vegetarian food was like a dream, because I was in vegetarian family. So everybody is different. But yeah, I love baked fish. I bake myself. I have an oven, and that is very tasty. And yeah, all kinds of food. And these days, I'm finding fruits and nuts also, because I'm moving to more healthier choices. I'm passionate about health, finding out about how this body works, because human physiology is not like a subject anymore. It is about what this instrument. That is how I see it now. We can see things as it is. It is like you have the user manual in your hand when you have a book about physiology. We learn about the cell, we learn about DNA. So I started exploring health, and I eat dry fruits, berries, cranberries, and nuts. So all of them I like very much. Yeah, go ahead with your other questions.
Cool. What do you like for hobby? Do you like a specific hobby?
I have a lot of hobbies actually. I try out everything. Singing. I'm learning music these days. Just when I take a walk in the morning, I learn classical music. That is a hobby. I work out, and that is a hobby for me. I mean, everything that I do is a hobby actually. Reading, and then been improving, working on all kinds of skills that I felt some kind of fear in even trying them out because of failure. But now it is no longer there. So why not do that? I have all the time in the world, and I improving all kinds of skills. But mainly, I'm interested in music these days. Apart from the fitness, you know, I work out in gym for 2 hours, and I'm also passionate about all these things. Because when we see things in our experience, it is very interesting.
How do you feel about Sangha or satsang? Like, do you have a spiritual community around you that you feel like you can be around, that you can easily,
Mm,
like feel a sense of like divine or powerful friendship, brotherhood, sisterhood with?
mm. I do have friends, but it is more like online interaction. I'm connected to a lot of people who ask me questions. Sometimes we talk, but not very close to me. Only these days, I mean, very recently, people who know me personally, they are getting familiar with my YouTube videos, and they're just, wondering and what it is all about. They are curious, and they realize that I'm doing something, but not really like a satsang or something like that, very close. So it only happens like online. I meet people occasionally, video calls, chat, and we share our experiences. Both, people who are seeking, who are trying to get to that point, and people who have already crossed. And that's when I figured out that many people are, struggling with this question about intentionality. That seems to be a weird state of to be in, because society expects something different, and you think that everything is perfect. I mean, you feel it is a feeling of nothing needs to be changed. Life is beautiful and perfect, right? Yeah. So there's something like, I'm actually working on things like how to make it more relatable to people, because if you say the truth, like for example, I wake up every day looking forward to how wonderful it is going to be, excited to face a new day. But if I say this to somebody else, they wouldn't be able to relate to it. They kind of want to talk like how difficult and hectic things have been, how difficult it is to get up in the morning to do things. So it is like totally opposite. So yeah, I think that is something that I'm trying to find out, how to make it more relatable. You have to be honest. At the same time, you shouldn't irritate or people. When you talk about it, when you talk about how amazing life is, that is really weird, because it is unfortunately people are. We are living in a world where people think that life is hectic, but life is awesome. That is exactly what it is. It's amazing. Every day it is different.
Victim
It is like you're
consciousness
going.
is another way to say
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Victim versus creator consciousness. Yeah.
Yes. That's nice choice of words. There is one friend that I have. I talk to her often, and it's she's from Iran, so it is like people are too far away from me. People that I talk to. There is a couple from Germany who are interested in my work. They actually came here, twice to India. I met them, and they are still in touch. And they are very old. They have seen Osho, J.Krishnamurti, and many other people in real life, and they loved my book. The second book is not that, selling, but the first book is it has a lot of good reviews from people. It is about the science and spirituality. The second book is about religions in general. I wrote a book just to explore the mystical aspects of all religions, to show how, uh, I thought that book will help reduce some conflicts, so that people understand that each and every religion has a mystical aspect, which is pretty much the same, like Sufism in Islam, Christian mystic traditions, all have this, they have similar themes of getting rid of this, illusion, and transforming their consciousness. But that book is not it is not very interesting for people, I guess. I have it here. This is the second one. If you haven't seen it, the first one is The Truth About Spiritual Enlightenment. And this is the Discovering God book.
I love you so much, bro.
Yeah, I love you too.
So cool. I really feel like the one deeply in you. And like when you're holding up your books, like I just feel so much happiness and so much like relatability, like deeply. Um, if you,
Thank you.
yeah, if you will, at like the soul level, at that level of the depth of what's possible, right?
Yeah.
And I love the focus on relatability, and especially like bridging into the victim consciousness, because we were there 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And just the small incremental things, but also the bigger like quantum leaps to make those available at the same time or the cosmic leaps, if you will, for the other selves to feel less suffering and to feel more of the divine perfection,
Yes.
to feel more of the no separation, yeah, wholeness automatically, and then to create from there. Yeah, I feel really good about this, about you and I and what we can further create together. Do you also have any like desire to, because you say most of the people that you engage with most often are further away from you. Do you also have desire to like live among, like as we build Shambhala, the spiritual kingdom, as that gets actualized on the planet? Are you interested in like joining to come and live together with powerful spiritual community that ends up getting into the thousands and millions of people that are all about the same vibration?
Sure. Yeah, that'll be great to meet people and live with them. But I don't have much idea about it. Maybe I will have to explore the Shambhala. I mean, whatever your plans. But yeah, it sounds like a wonderful thing to do.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'll I'll share some of that with you.
Sure.
Online, a little bit online, just like, yeah, if you imagine heaven on earth and you imagine paradise on earth, and all basic needs being met, the creator potential being so effortlessly activated. Anytime you want to generate something, it's just there, with whatever technologies that are needed. Energy is so abundant. The playfulness, the innocence, the spiritual alignment, that vibration, the radiance of love and light, this like very natural ecological integration with technology and with civilization. The freedom, just total freedom, unity, oneness, just that level of abundance and that level of choice and freedom and that level of being amongst other selves of that same caliber, of that same frequency, and then creating from there. And then, of course, merging with our galactic friends at the same time. So, yep. So getting ready for that.
Yeah.
So all of that.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. And so that's being actualized right now, and we'll keep sort of sharing about it as much as we feel is right along the journey online. But offline, I can also share a little bit more. And yeah, and the best place to get involved, also the link is always in the bio for what we're building. It's called No Limit Society. Hundreds of people from around the world waking up, becoming free agents for the ignition of global awakening. And it's perfect. So yeah, Bentinho Massaro, the team here, and the mission is just, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like this mission. Yeah, it's the Bodhisattva vow, and it's also building heaven on earth, paradise on earth, and to not just be so non-intentional that the matrix forces take over. So so the building of Shambhala is the obsoleting of the oppressive matrix contractive forces. And so yeah, so that's all.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. Yeah, it's looks like an amazing plan to help people and to make these things available for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And then it radiates out as like radiates out a frequency or a transmission to the collective for those that are seeking union to come to Shambhalas where their basic needs can be met, where they can actualize them knowing themselves fully. They can actualize that potential. So, and just be so abundant. Like the abundance is such a big key. Like it's such a big key, like feeling abundant, like being, that's such a big key to freedom. Like so many of the contracted knots are in the feelings of lack. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, sweet, bro. I feel really good about this episode, this first one we did together. I feel really good about our brotherhood. So nice.
Yeah, me too. So it's a very good, interesting. We went over a lot of things today. Yeah. And I think introducing these books and the subject is going to be useful for many people. Because I think Richard Boyle's work needs a lot of attention. I was very impressed. Even I made a video on his, work, and I also sent him some emails. We communicated. Maybe we can. Yeah. So I think he will be also happy to know that his book is, reaching many people.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, and maybe even at some point, if he's feeling it, we could have a 3-person conversation. That could be fun.
Yes, that'll be wonderful. Yeah, I have to just connect with him again. It's been a few months. Last time I sent him an email.
Cool. Yeah, sweet. I'll have all of those links that we discussed in the bio below. And also, thanks everybody. We love you so much. Thanks for tuning into this episode. And we would love to hear from you in the comments below on how the episode resonated for you, what some of your key takeaways were, where you're at in your journey. Maybe Shanmugam and I can actually jump into the comments and respond to you and engage with you there. We would love for you to also like the video if it brought you value, helps the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Also share the video with those that you feel like this would profoundly impact and resonate with. And similarly, this conversation is going to be up on Shanmugam's channel as well. And you can find his channel in the links of the bio of this video. And then I'll give him the links to our channel, Simulation, as well. And he can put those in the bio. So also subscribe to his channel, go check out his videos, like his content. If it brings you value, share his content, that type of stuff. You can find his book links also, The Truth About Spiritual. It's enlightenment. Yeah. The Truth About Spiritual Enlightenment, also Discovering God, also the Book of Quotes. You'll find all those links in the bio below. So yeah, check him out and support him there. Support the synthesis of spirituality and science. Support that. Support that, baby.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shanmugam. Thanks, brother. Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Cool. I'll end.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was so good. So good, my man. I'm going to end the recording, and then you and I can stay in the room for a bit and keep talking, okay?
Sure, yeah.
Bye, everyone.